want to reiterate that we are in the most noble profession of managing talent. And by the way, we have evolved from personnel managers to HR managers to human capital. Nowadays, we are talent managers. So, okay, there we go. So we are in the era of managing talent, not human capital anymore, not resources anymore, not personnel anymore. And what that means is that we are cognizant of the fact that every person brings very unique talent that we as HR should be able to identify and place properly. And then we manage that so that in line with what we are discussing today, this talent is able to perform very well and our organizations can continue to thrive. So what we are going to be discussing today is performance management, but with the bias on dealing with that unperforming employee in terms of the procedure. How do you manage this person who is not performing very, 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 very well? And this is a reality for all of us. I am a mother. We come from families. All of us are not the same. And so also in the employment space, as HR managers, we must be those people who are very alive to the fact that our employees and people that we work with cannot be the same. So we'll have the talent that is doing very well. We'll have people who have issues. We'll have underperforming employees. And we should be the people who are looking into strategies of enabling or supporting this person who is not performing very well, being their advocate and doing, and when they ultimately, possibly, we need them to part ways with this person out of non-performance, then we do it most importantly in a fair manner, in a lawful manner, but also in a humane manner. We have been accused of being the HR, but without a H in it. And that's a conversation that we continue to struggle with. And during this presentation, I hope that we can rethink our role as advocates of the employees, the top talent, the people who are struggling, the average employees, and most importantly, the non-performer. All right, so we'll begin with a brief introduction around the topic of performance management. Let's go back to the, okay. All right, so our objectives, I say essentially, as I have said, is as basic as reinforcing understanding around performance management with a bias towards managing that non-performing employee and managing the process of terminating an employee on the basis of non-performance. Then we will look at what constitutes effective performance management. Again, this is not new to us. We'll just be doing some revision and emphasizing on a few critical issues that we need to look at or relook or to rethink or reevaluate as HR managers. And then this presentation or this session is very unique. We are going to be looking at a case study. My colleague here, who we went to college with, will attest that we are trained teachers. And as teachers, we were taught that in an adult class, you don't just talk. There are different methodologies and approaches when it comes to presentations. And what we are going to do this evening is to have a case study. We'll break into groups. And it's competitive, by the way. The group that wins, it's performance management. We have a reward for you. We might be sponsoring all of you to fly to Mombasa for your Mashujaa Day. Watch this space. Mr. Positive Flavors, that is where you will shine. So we'll go into groups and we'll have an assignment. Again, I will emphasize why it is important that we participate in the case studies. When you do something, you tend to remember, you tend to engage more, as opposed to just sitting here and listening to, one monotone and evaluating my performance as well as your facilitator this evening. So that is very critical and unique. And I want us to participate and support our teams when we go there fully so that we can be the winners. And then we'll come back Hopefully the groups will have appointed somebody who can take notes and make presentations on their behalf. And then we will wind up by looking at the strategies for aligning performance management practices in organizations with the legal requirements. Again, a highlight, we may not cover everything, but the things that we'll pick here are things that we can go and start implementing in our various organizations. And finally, we will look at, we will have a summary and conclusion. Okay, so definition, I will not use the word definition because definition is a bit academic. I will go for the meaning of performance management and maybe just to try and put it into context that performance management is a critical component or strategy of talent management. It sits right in the center or in the heart of talent management in an organization. And just to reinforce where we would be coming from, our function of whatever we call it, HR, human capital, is a necessity of the business case. So we cannot have HR without first being very clear of what is our business. So the starting point, of course, is to be very clear about why are we there as an organization. So we begin with the business case in terms of what is our vision. You know, sometimes we do things like kukutu, we scratch the surface, even as we work as employees or even as we work as managers. But sometimes we forget that we are there to think about the vision, and the vision is the bigger picture. Where do you want to see organization? And this is a vision that should be not seen or carried by the top. It should be cascaded to everybody. So we begin with understanding the business in terms of its vision, in terms of its mission. What is it that we exist to do? And not just do excel in. We keep on talking about excellence in performance management and all that. For those of us who are in the corporate, we know how things are tough. There's cutthroat competition, and therefore the mission really needs to be very alive in our conversations as employees, as managers. And then now, once you have established the mission, vision, of course, the strategic direction, the strategic objectives, that's where now you come and analyze or evaluate the need for human capital, talent. What do you require in terms of numbers? What do you require in terms of skills, in terms of competencies, in terms of attitudes for you to to go where you're going, to achieve your mission, to head into your vision, which is your dream. So that is where we come in as HR to fit into the business strategy. And then now performance management then fits as one of our strategies within the HR space, within the talent management space, which I could just summarize. You know, we have many functions, but ideally we talk of once you know what is your requirement in terms of talent, then you need to begin with acquisition. You can help me with typing some of these things in the chat. Feel free to co-teach, co-facilitate with me. Talent acquisition, isn't it? That is usually the first point. And then when they come in, you develop, you develop them so that they are able to perform at their optimum. And then when you develop them, that's when you can start talking about performance management, because you have used the right strategies, the right methodologies to ensure that you have acquired the best from the market. Then once they come now, you develop them continuously through training. And by the way, when we talk about training, we have to remember that training does not necessarily mean taking people to school. Training is continuous. Then now you do performance management, and eventually you need to have a succession strategy. So those four areas are the ones I would highlight on. But of course, we have these other small and many other strategies that are around retaining the talent within the organization. But because our focus is on performance management, let me just put it amongst those key critical ones: acquisition, development, performance management, and then finally succession plan. And succession planning is where you'll be looking at the continuity of your business, the continuity of your functions. And because employee exit is alive, it's either due to retirement and many other reasons that we are all aware about. But you have to ensure that you have your strategies around succession planning, so that you have talent, you have a pool that can be able to continue with the business of the organization. So as I had mentioned, before I go to the objectives, then I need to say that if you're not managing performance effectively, then you're failing the organization, because you may have acquired the best talent, you may have trained them, but if their performance is not driving is not leading to the expected outcomes, then there's a problem there. So performance management actually is like the heart of what we exist to do. We have to be very deliberate about performance of our employees. And I'm sure as we move along the way, we'll be able to highlight some of the critical steps or some of the critical areas that we must have if you're talking about performance management. So our objectives are three. I'll just mention them quickly: to enhance the understanding of performance management, as I have said; to reflect on core decisions, that is the employment and labor relations courts, decisions in managing employee performance, and then to discuss strategies for effective performance management. So at this point, I think we need now to look at what constitutes effective performance management. I've already mentioned that you cannot have performance management if you don't understand where your business is going. What is your mission? What are your goals? Because everybody's effort is supposed to be building towards that. Whether I come in as a gardener, whether I come in as a driver, I need to be seeing my efforts in terms of how are they contributed to the mission and the vision of my organization. So the critical components of a performance management system, as again we may be aware, start with planning, setting very clear goals, and of course the goals cannot emanate from HR. The goals emanate from the organization. So you have the organizational strategic plan, and then the strategic goals for HR, or strategic goals for every other unit. Before now, you are able to cascade them to functions, to departments, to units, eventually to everybody, so that everybody at the end of the day has very clear performance goals. So the goals are not imagined, the goals are not thoughts. They are not, they need to be interlinked. If it is finance, their goals need to be fitting into supply chain, into HR, into the core mandate of the organization, whether we exist to sell, or we exist to provide medical services, or we exist to provide financial services. Our goals need to be very clear but interrelated, so that all of us are building each other towards, or a part of the blocks which are building towards the strategic goals of the organization. So once that is very clear, we know that we are supposed to have tools. And those of us who do not have tools, probably, we need to do that as a matter of urgency. So what are your tools for communicating goals? Whether it is at the strategic level, whether it is at the departmental level, or unit level, or a branch level, and then how does that now come down to an individual? We talk of performance appraisal tools, we talk about KPIs, and those are tools that we normally use. Most importantly, again, performance management has to be supported by continuous monitoring, providing feedback, and coaching. Often we, especially those of us in government, we do it sometimes as an academic exercise. again, based on so many things. It could be a culture thing, it could be an incompetence thing on the part of the managers or the supervisor, so that once they have signed performance contracts or performance, whatever, targets with their employees, they don't do anything. They wait until the end of the appraisal period for them to be able to come back now and talk about evaluation, which is really wrong. So continuous monitoring, providing feedback and coaching is very important. And of course, during that period, you can do so many things. You can train, you can reset the goals, you can look at the challenges and address all those things. Remember, we are setting goals not to punish our employees, but to ensure that they achieve. It's like the way we send our kids to school, and our teachers and parents actually work so hard to ensure that this child performs. So the same thing should apply when it comes to managing employee performance. We should look at it in terms of, we are setting goals, yes, but the aim is to ensure that we assist you to, I'm looking at the time, I think I will do like 25 minutes before you do the case study, to assist the employee to exceed, go beyond their goals and expectations. And then now at the end of that cycle, we what is important is measuring performance, and we will see this along the way. Where we do not, if you don't have a system of evaluating performance, then you're not doing the right thing, because should there be a dispute or a case and you're required to provide evidence in court, and there was no evidence that there was a clear system, there was a consistent and clear and a fair system of evaluating performance, then of course it will definitely be on the losing side. Recognition and awards. Remember that there's an old adage that says what gets measured gets done. All right. Then what gets done gets rewarded, and then what gets rewarded gets done repeatedly. Whether it's marks for us, our children at home, whether it is work, whatever it is that we do, whether it is at the workplace context, if you recognize my efforts, my work, my results, I will be inclined to even put more efforts. I will feel happy. And recognition and rewards does not necessarily have to come at the tail end of the appraisal, although it is good. But continuous recognition and rewards for our employees is critical to support performance management. And what that does, it cultivates, it enriches our culture that we want to inculcate and sustain in terms of performance management. And then now what is important is addressing underperformance. And we have said that that is a reality, even at home. All our fingers, if you look at your fingers like this, they are not equal. So there's this little pinky addressing underperformance. How do you go about that? And it is a reality. And remember, as HR professions, we're supposed to be the advocates for our employees, whether they're performing well or they're not performing well. Okay, so having done that summary of what may constitute effective performance management, of course, this is supported by a lot of things. This is what we see at the surface. Beneath there's leadership, the top leadership commitment. They have to be committed to ensuring that they want an effective performance management system. Another critical component of this, or another critical foundation that you can't turn away from, is a culture. Are we supporting a culture of performance management? And we normally say that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and that is the reality. You may have all these things, but if you don't have an enabling culture, then it becomes difficult to talk of effective performance management. So now we will be looking at the case. We have talked of case studies, but we're only going to be looking at one case study in the interest of time. This is a very recent case that was determined last month. It's very alive, and it speaks into a lot of critical issues of how we terminate how we go about terminating the services of an underperforming employee. So the question is, as we are gathered here this evening, how many of us, by a show of hand, know how the process of doing this? By a show of hand, you can do a thumbs up if you're sure, and then we can see how we assist each other. Josephine, very good. Valerie Ogutu, very good. So Valerie Ogutu and Josephine, your team leaders in your respective groups. I hope, Hosea, you're taking notes. And that's a good thing. We are here to share knowledge. We are here to reinforce that knowledge. We are here to improve on our practices. So what will happen? We'll give you 30 minutes to go into respective groups. You'll have 2 groups essentially. Once you go into your group, I'll be allowing my colleague Hosea to just mention exactly what is going to happen. But in a nutshell, go to your groups, identify a moderator of choice, or Mr. Flavor. You can hire his services if you can afford it. In any of the groups. So choose a moderator, have a secretary to take notes, and then you'll come back and report. Quickly, we can look at the questions that you'll be handling. And the questions are going to be marked. So this is the case study. It's a case of Namai versus NBK. And that is the reference. So we'll not give you a lot of details. We'll give you the decision. We'll give you a judgment. A judgment is what a judge writes at the end of hearing both parties. So we'll give you the decision, read, and then as you reflect on the issues that are pointed out by the judge, we call them the learned judge. In this case, it was a man, so we call that my lord. I work in a complicated organization. Anyway, so you will go through what my lord determined and come back and respond to. If you can look at the next slide, we will be discussing the potential challenges employers might face in implementing the court's decisions. The statement there is might face in implementing the court's decision. Sorry about that typo. And then what we also want you to bring out is how do you balance employee rights and organizational needs when it comes to termination of employees. And of course, your reference is that case study. And then the last question is how do you develop effective PIPs? Because our focus is on the underperforming employee. And if our management programs and systems and tools are objective, we shouldn't shy away from talking about, we talk about PIPs in undertones, because again of the way we have stigmatized a person who has been given a score of not, very high. We stigmatize underperformance, and I think what the court is trying to tell us is that that cannot be business as usual. So how do we develop actually and implement effective PIPs? How do we destigmatize this business of PIPs? How can I proudly say as Mercy to Richard and other colleagues here that, you know what, guys, in the last performance appraisal, hey, kuna mahali nimelemewa, without feeling ashamed, without feeling like I don't want to come back to work, without feeling like I want to render my resignation letter. So without saying a lot of things, a quick brief from Hosea, then we can break into groups. Hosea, kindly, you can just highlight briefly what is going to happen.
Okay. So I hope I'm audible. Okay, so basically we have a number of groups, 2 groups. So each will divide the teams into 2. you get into the groups, you'll be able to, as Mercy has mentioned, you'll have someone championing the whole discussion, and then you have a secretary who will be able to take notes, and then after that, then you'll be able to come back to the main group after the time allocated, and then we can have just a brief presentation following the 3 questions that have been listed by Mercy. So those are the guiding principles for this discussion. So shortly, I'll be releasing all of you to the groups. In case you have any challenges, you can just chat, and then we'll be able to assist you. But it shouldn't be a challenge getting into the groups. I don't know whether we have any question as we open up the groups. Richard, you okay? And also Richard and Mercy will still be in the groups. I'll also be moving around, so feel free. So here we go, just shortly. So Mercy, I'll be moving, once they're all gone, I'll move you to the one and Richard to the other. Let's join. There's a request to join. Just click on the request and as you join to the groups. Billion Benson, Camila, let's join. Joyce, let's join. Mweni, Wilson, Joan, Edwin, let's join. Mweni, Edwin, and Joan, if you can be able to join.
Richard, I appoint you as the moderator. Moderator of choice. Please don't argue about that. You are the moderator of choice. Then the other person will be the secretary. Just feel Richard is disqualified. He's performed that fraud in that group setup. We'll be biased against the other group. So just I being the judge, you overlooked. Okay. Are people still coming in because they run out of time? My thinking, we can just continue, Carol.
Angel. So Tabitha, I'm moving you.
Okay.
Mhm. Have you seen any notification to join?
From my email?
No, you're supposed to be able to join directly.
I can see tap to join breakout 2.
Yeah.
Mercy.
Oh, yours is still saying breakout 2.
Please take breakout 2. Mercy.
Okay. Okay, just a moment. So, Tabitha. Mhm. Tabitha.
I can now see breakout room 1, Richard.
Move to breakout room 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I joined that group.
Yes, join. The rest are already ongoing with the discussion. Yeah.
Okay.
Angel. Angel Martins. Hi, Lillian. Hi, Lillian. Hi, Caroline. Hey. Hi, John.
Hi, hi, hi.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Oh, sorry, you've joined late.
Yes.
Guys are in groups, so let me move you to. Have you seen a pop-up to join a group?
Yeah, but I bypassed it.
Oh, let me just send it again so that you can join group 1 where majority of the team is.
Okay.
Yeah, so when it when the pop-up comes, you just join that group. Caroline, hi. So John, shortly I'm moving you to the group 1. And then also Caroline, just accept to join the group. Have you seen it? Hi, Leah.
Sim, porque até já disse algumas vezes.
That doesn't mean that you go telling everybody.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Over to you, Mercy.
Well, welcome back. A very warm welcome back to the main room. And I think we begin by giving a round of applause to all of us. Let's start by clapping for the moderators. Josephine, you did a fantastic job. Another round of applause to the secretaries.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you,
did a
madam.
good job. And wow, the excellent contributions made by so many of us. There's a lot of knowledge and expertise and experience sharing that was going on. A bigger hand for anyone who said something, those who put their comments on the chat. The chat was so full with a lot of useful contributions, and I dare say that we should maintain this group for continuous learning and all that. So thank you very much. That was very good. The participation was good. That is highly commendable. And now, before I say a lot of things, I will allow Josephine and the secretary maybe like 5 minutes to summarize the discussion for us and tell us what they discussed and how they responded to the questions. Very, very briefly, 5 minutes should be adequate.
Thank you, Mercy, for the opportunity. Apparently, I was the moderator of choice in my group, and we had a secretary by the name George. George, kindly take it over and give the summary of our discussion.
Okay, thank you so much. Before I give the summary, I would like to apologize because I had some kind of interruptions which necessitated my working out. So it's when I came in. But by the time I was coming in, I got a clip or maybe a question of interest where I wanted to contribute, but time has gone. Then I don't know whether I can be given 1 minute only to contribute, then maybe I come back to maybe what I am doing.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay, George. Is there a volunteer who can, as we wait for George, just highlight a summary of the issues that we have picked from the case, particularly on the failure of the employer? Yeah, what is the employer? This is the employer that we have bashed so harshly. And remember, we could be the ones in those shoes. We could be the ones who did not advise management. We could be the ones who are shy, and we ended up either, representing or misrepresenting the issues. So someone can highlight the gaps in terms of this employer. Any volunteer?
Maybe to start with, I can say there was poor placement of the employee, because we can see from the case study, this employee has been performing so well in the last 20 years until this point where he was promoted and where he was now falling short of the company's targets and targets. So there was poor placement, and also we can see that he had requested also to be replaced in another position, which he believed that he could perform well, and it fell deaf on the management's ears. Another thing was lack of training. As much as the employee was put on PIP, there was no follow-up and effective feedback on his performance while on PIP. Another thing was the lack of need assessment lacked in the process. And also there was no fair hearing of the case of the employee. That's it.
Very, very good. Very, very, very good. Those are things that if the management of this particular organization had taken note, then this case would not have gone that way. There was a comment that maybe this was an employee who was, destined for termination. There was a concern that everything seemed to be going wrong for this guy, just like that. And within a very short time, he was transformed, or he mutated from a high performer to a person who is supposed to be dismissed on account of non-performance. So the issue is, are there circumstances sometimes that we find ourselves in whereby you know very well that either way, this employee needs to go, and how do you go about that? You'll come up with a termination letter that says all manner of things, and you will provide evidence, to try and support your case, but you know very well, ile unajua katikati yako na Mungu na management, you really wanted to fire this guy. So the question, that is another challenge for us as HR practitioners. And how do you navigate that, surely? How do you handle that? Those are some of the glaring issues that we are faced with every day. I don't know whether our rapporteur is ready now, just to give us a summary of the issues that we have discussed.
May I also
Okay,
add? Okay.
George, you're ready?
I can see George is ready.
Okay, George, please, kindly.
Okay, I think we can give a time first before I talk. Maybe she has something.
All right, Leila, you can go as we wait for George. In that case, then George will not necessarily have to repeat what we have already covered. He'll probably focus on the last question. George, if you can hear me, you can focus on the how to develop a good PIP. You can start from the last question, because I think most of the things in question 1 and 2, we are addressing them as we move along. Leila?
Yes, thank you, Mercy. I just wanted to add some salt to what you just said. There's a trend, I don't know if it is just me who have noticed, that HR and management are colluding to put stuff on those things that we call, I don't know what, only just to get them off because we do not want to pay them for service. So if you look at Namai's case, in other words, he has been working there for 27 years, and from a high performer, and then you just deteriorate like that, there's just something. So there could be the company was trying to avoid paying the service, which is really something. It's either that or they come up with short-term contracts, so that you will not have to ask for your gratuity, you will not have to ask for your service. So that is also something that as HR we should know how to go about it when it comes to your desk and the management is pressing you. At the end of the day, it is you versus that court and versus that staff. Thank you.
A challenge to all of us. I don't know why most of us in HR do not rise to the position of CEOs, because I think if we were aggressive enough, and I think it's a challenge to all of us here, if we take up those CEO positions, MD positions, I believe you're going to influence some of the policies, some of the decisions that are taken, and practices that are undertaken in organizations. So a big challenge to all of us. Let us endeavor to get into the C-suite spaces and bring out the issues, because we are professionals. We have a lot of wealth of knowledge. Unfortunately, we find ourselves not at the decision table. We find ourselves at the implementation table, and sometimes it is not very, very easy, as Leila has aptly put. Okay, George, you're ready now?
Thank you, I'm ready.
Yeah, take us through issue number 3, so that we don't belabor on issue number 1 and 2, which we will which we have covered, and maybe I'll just give a summary as we conclude, and anything that will be pending, we can leave it for the Q&A session. So if you can deal with PIP as per our discussion, that would be good.
Okay, thank you so much. Allow me to take just only 2 minutes to summarize this. Number 1, PIP, it is a supportive process. We have the management and we have the employee. And number 1, what we need to know, the employee should be supported by the supervisor. The supervisor is the immediate supervisor, the immediate person the employee is reporting to. So there's one thing which is very much important. we have what is called information. The employee has to be given the reason why, or should be, let me say that should be informed of the areas of concern. So the areas of concern, those are where the PIP are going to revolve around. So after discussion with the employee concerning the matters of concern, so the process, the entire process should be guided through by number one, the supervisor, and number two, the human resource officer. And then just what I've said, it is a supportive supervision. Here is where we also have the management coming in. So having developed a proper planning, considering a specific task which are assigned to that particular employee, where poor performance are being, let's say, are being witnessed, then it should also come with the strategies, and it should also come with the timeline and how this employee is going to be supported to achieve those various areas of concern. So number one, the employee has to be given that conducive working environment, no threat, and it should be done out of goodwill. It should not be some sort of, it is not a punishment, let me say so in summary. So that is the whole process. So the entire, from the initial stage, the supervisor should be taking this particular employee from step to step to ensure at the end of it all that with the given timeline, so that those areas of concern are addressed, and also a report should also be written on the same. Finally, we have also a responsibility of the management, and the management we have through the supervisor. And here we also have the training. If they maybe those specific tasks, there's a knowledge gap. That's where the training is coming in. If it is, for example, this case that we've been dealing with, this employee has been in this employment for over 20 years, and again added a new role. So that new role would mean that is a new responsibility, for which we have various skills which are needed. We have various knowledge which are also needed. So these skills, the employee should be provided with each and every information and each and every tool to ensure that performance is at first is of required standard. So if all these things are done, the employee is doing his or her level, and the employer again on the same, so that it is being fair both to the employee and to the employer. So that finally, in case of any default, employer has done his or her part, then we can now say that the employee has failed, having been given enough time, given all the necessary information and all the tools which are needed for that particular activity to be performed. Thank you so much.
Let's appreciate George for a job well done. Thank you so much, George. We are not appreciating, but very good. Thank you, Flora. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so I think George has done a very good job in taking us through what should constitute a PIP. And without repeating myself, what is critical is that it ought to be something that is well known and understood and embraced in the organization as part of our performance management culture. Don't talk of a PIP if your employees do not identify with what a PIP is. They know why we have a PIP and they understand the process. So very critical that whenever we are talking about a policy or something new, as somebody very well put, you need to begin with the needs assessment, and then you do stakeholder engagement when you're developing whatever it is. And then as you introduce the change, you need to do a lot of sensitization, communication, affirmations, reaffirmations, and continuous training so that you have everybody on board. And then in terms of the structure, the most fundamental thing is that we are agreeing. There's open communication between myself and the supervisor, that these are my performance gaps, and this is how we are going to tackle them. Remember, the objective is to assist me as an employee to improve my performance. And one of the key issues in our case study that the court observed is that there was total negligence on the employer's part to take to recognize the grievances raised. And so what we are being told is that you could follow the process. You can follow whatever process you think is supposed to be followed as your policy. But employees' issues have to be heard. If I raise concerns and there's evidence that I raised concerns and you did not heed into those concerns and you do not demonstrate how you are able to address this concern, then I think the court has demonstrated that it will side with the employee. So whatever decisions that we are making in terms of our managing employees, we have to make those decisions within certain contexts, both from our perspective and both from the employees' point of it. I think we have done very well. In terms of employer obligations, of course, is the critical issues that have come out is, in addition to the many things we have said, fairness, fair treatment, consistency in decision making, so that you don't treat Mercy this way and then you treat Leila differently, and yet the issues are similar, the circumstances are similar. So fairness. And then fairness includes procedural fairness, and we'll be looking at that when we look at the Fair Administrative Action Act. Then communication, we can't overemphasize that. Both ways, let's respect what employees say in whatever feedback mechanisms that we have. And I think that is now. So I think we need to move back now to my slide so that I get to conclude this, and anybody who could be having an issue. There was a question on the duration of PIP. There is no legal provision for the period, but there are practices, of course, that have been adopted: 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months. But what you should ask yourself is, what is the objective of your PIP? And is the period reasonable for somebody to improve performance? And you can structure your PIP for different categories of staff. There are those PIP, there are those expected improvements in our work that can be achieved within a short time. Like, for instance, if it is a receptionist, maybe, and the gaps in performance is in record keeping and all that. You can have a PIP that is shorter compared to a PIP for a finance manager or a head of sales. Maybe you're supposed to enhance sales by certain millions or billions. Then you can't tell me that's a PIP that can be that can be given a timeline of 30 working days. So again, depending on the duties, the functions, responsibilities, then I think organizations can design PIPs that have different timelines. What is critical is that you engage, it's needs driven. Whatever policy, whatever procedures you have in your organization, whether you're developing or reviewing, there needs to be a needs analysis. There has to be participation of everybody, as we have been observing as we were discussing this issue. So allow me to move into the last bit of our presentation. We have a lawyer in the house. I'll be calling Counsel Christina finally to give us just comment on anything that we may have missed, or word of caution as we come to the end of the presentation. So very well done, team. If we can go to the next slide, where we are looking at the strategies for developing, strategies for aligning performance management practices with legal requirements. These are things that we have discussed, so I will just go through them very, very quickly. The list is not exhaustive.
I have a request.
Yes, George.
Yes, kindly, just 1 minute. There's a topic, though it is outside what we've been discussing, but I think it is very much interesting so that we can help each other. The question was, if someone on probation should be put on PIP? According to me, within 1 minute. I think that is out of order. Because, for example, probation, it is some sort of training, and it has a specific timeline to a maximum of, let's say, 12 months. So what if someone's probation timeline has been extended to a maximum of 12 months? And again, when you subject this person to a PIP, and yet the timeline for probation has expired. So I think, to me, it is not practical, and it is not regulated limiting. So someone on probation, that's a different scenario, and that's a different scheme. And someone on PIP is also a different scheme and a different scenario. That is on my side. Thank you.
Thank you, George. That's a critical question, and I'm glad you have brought it to the fore. I tend to agree with you, but this is something that I will also ask our counsel in the House whether there's any legal basis for that. But as you have said, someone on probation cannot again be a person on PIP, because remember, PIP is for someone who is already engaged to provide services, and the person who is already now settled in the organization with clear targets and put under the performance contract or performance framework. All right. So what are the key issues to consider for us to ensure that we are aligning performance management practices with legal requirements? This one came out. Do we understand the labor laws? Do we understand the regulations? Do we understand the industry standards? Do we understand emerging jurisprudence or emerging law from the courts? So we need to familiarize ourselves with the Employment Acts and other related laws that govern management of the employee. And someone said that the employment laws always protect the employees. Then, so once you understand the employment laws, you develop policies. I think the court has also, in different cases, communicated that where you do not have policies and you do not have moral authority to talk about anything, how will you be basing your decisions or your action? And if your policy says this, and then you end up doing the opposite, then you're in trouble. Then if you don't have a policy, then it is not for the court to develop for you the policy. So you will also find yourself in a lot of problems if you do not have policies that you're implementing consistently. Then ensure fair treatment and non-discrimination. The law is very clear. The Constitution and other laws are very clear on fairness and non-discrimination on whatever basis. And we have a whole buffet of issues that you cannot discriminate employees. The basis for non-discrimination, there's a whole lot of them there. Consistency in your criteria, that should be consistency, not consistent criteria, yes. Clear communication, we have said that. Clear communication. And I dare say that this begins with the substantive issues and to the process. It begins with even setting out clear targets. Do we have JDs for our people? Do they understand what their role entails? When we have a change in anything, how have we communicated? Like, for instance, in the Namai's case, communication on the introduction of the PIPs, was it clear? Was it embraced? Was it understood? And communication, we have said it is both ways. Then proper documentation, again, that's something that is coming out from a lot of decisions in court, because again, you have to document everything you do in terms of management of employees, and the onus of keeping records is always on the employer. Then appeal and grievances procedures. The Constitution and the Employment Act are very categorical about providing employees with an opportunities for fair hearing and for appeal and for raising grievances. And as we have said, that the grievances that are raised by somebody are not or cannot be treated in vain. Privacy and confidentiality, that's another critical component of making sure that we are within the legal requirements. Do we understand confidentiality of employee records, and which kind of records are we supposed to keep confidential? What information is confidential, so that again you're not in contravention of the law. Training for managers, a lot of these issues around management of employees are as a result of ignorance from the supervisors, the employers that we have, the managers that we have. So we really need to be very proactive to ensure that our managers are trained, our supervisors understand people management practices, so that whatever they do, then they are doing it within knowledge and legal thresholds. Transparency in rewards, very critical. We have talked about PIPs, and we had a whole discussion on how do we implement that, starting with the needs analysis. If we don't have, I know there are organizations where we don't have PIPs. So tomorrow, don't wake up and go and say we are introducing PIPs. You will find yourself in a lot of trouble. There's a whole process of how you introduce some of these things in an organization. And by the way, I'm passionate about change management because I see a lot of blunders when it comes to introducing new things. Before you win the hearts of the people, and before you win their support, and before they see something we call what is in it for me, yeah, it will not be easy. So strive to ensure that changes are implemented in a structured and the right manner. Feedback and coaching during performance, all right. Continuous feedback, coaching, training, providing resources. We have seen that is very critical as we manage employees' performance. Of course, as we now come to the end of the performance management cycle, this is where we have apart from the final review, regular reviews and updates must be provided. And then if you're not sure, it is always very safe to ensure that you have consulted somebody who understands the law. Otherwise, you'll be in a lot of problems. So be friends with lawyers, be friends with people in the legal practice, be friends with judges and magistrates, and people who can advise or guide you when it comes to some of these things. So that is it. We will be concluding with just looking at the Fair Administrative Act, because it is very related to what we are talking about. But before I do that, this is just a summary of the legal precedents on employee performance management issues. And just to show how the Employment Act has given a termination and dismissal audience from section 35 all the way to 51, talks about termination and dismissal. And one of the reasons, as we have seen, is on account of non-performance. So it's very critical that we familiarize ourselves with this particular section and we become experts and do the right thing. And then we have talked about evidence of performance systems within the organization. You will be required, or we are required, to ensure that there is evidence that we have a known and understood performance management system within organizations. And we have talked about PIPs. They need to be effective and enforceable. You just can't talk about PIPs and yet they are not effective. And gladly, we have taken a lot of time to discuss how to come up with an effective PIP program in organizations. Critically, the need for communication to the employee, so that you have a dialogue as you put this person, as you put me on the PIP, understand the reason. And as I had mentioned in the beginning, that this should not be like it's a punishment. We need to stop the stigma around that, because it is common for people not to perform well. It really depends on a lot of things. And as HR, we need to also contextualize non-performance. Let us be humane. Let us be human. Let us humanize that. I could be having issues outside, the workspace. Yeah, and you will never get to know that if you do not have a culture whereby you support feedback, open communication, and support to one another. Okay. So PIPs must set out. Sorry, let's go back. PIPs must set out standards of quality and quantity in performance that the employee is expected to meet. Objectives must be very clear. What is the gap? What is the objective? And how are we going to bridge that gap, and with what support and resources? And then courts have also held that employees cannot perform if no training has been given. So it is your responsibility to ensure that you train your employees, you continuously update their skills based on their areas of deployment and based on what they are doing. Other issues, the next slide. There's a case here that I had cited. You can read it. It's also very interesting. And the issue there was that the performance management structures we have are supposed to assist the employee to improve performance. So it will be very laughable or very, you will look very, I don't know, funny or fishy when you're there trying to prove how I am a non-performer, and you're not able to tell the court how you assisted me to perform. So those are some of the issues that are coming out. And then I had talked about if you don't have performance systems, then you have no moral authority again to talk about non-performance of the employee. We have all these manner of businesses and organizations that we run. And the day that someone will take us to court, that's when you realize that if you can't go to the court and say you cannot demonstrate what kind of a performance management structure and system you have, and evidence-based. That means you must have your tools, you must have your documentation ready, you must have the processes ready, you must show that the employees are aware, and it's evidence-based, as I have said. There's also emphasis in that other case of Samba Mwendwa versus this Jane Mwenda. She was an employee in Oltukai Lodge, and she was also dismissed on account of non-performance within, I think, a very short time. And what was coming out is that where poor performance is shown to be the reason for termination, the employee is placed at a high level of proof. And Section 43 and 45 of the Act, the employer must show that in arriving at such decision, they had put an employment practice or policy on how to measure good performance against bad performance. Again, issue of policy and structures overemphasized there. And I don't want to labor into that. Let's just move on into that. I will give the slides so that you can be able to look at some of the issues that are coming out, so that we are able to improve our practices. I thought it's important that I talk about the Fair Administrative Action Act briefly, because again, the principles align. I'm looking at the time, maybe 5 minutes. The principles align to whatever it is that we do. And as you could be aware, we all keep on hearing about Article 47, Fair Administrative Action, which gave rise now to the development or the enactment of the Act. And an administrative action, I think that is where we operate in. The Act defines it to be the powers, duties, and functions exercised by authorities or quasi-judicial authorities. Number 2, any act or omission or decision of anybody, and anybody includes ourselves, our supervisors, our managers, when they're making decisions, or authorities that affect the legal rights of any interest of that person to whom such action relates. An example that I have given is what we are discussing today. Termination of employment is an administrative act. amongst many in the HR space. Deployment is an administrative act. Introduction of a new policy is an administrative act, and all that. So according to the act, what the emphasis is that any act, any decision or act that we undertake must be expeditious, must be efficient, must be lawful, must be reasonable, and procedurally fair. So these are the key parameters that you need to remind yourselves whenever you want to make a decision. And if someone goes to court on account of any of these, you can be sure that the court will give them a hearing. So as we conclude, the last slide. Yeah, so in terms of the rights, the emphasis is that whenever a decision is likely to affect somebody, then that person must be at least given a notice, must be given an opportunity to be heard. There has to be a right of appeal internally, and there has to be detailed and clear instructions why the administrative action was taken. And I have summarized that these principles go hand in hand with the cost threshold of termination on the grounds of poor performance as discussed. So that marks the end of our discussion tonight. I will, before we open up the Q&A, I will ask Council Christina, you're still with us? If you have any comments that could enrich our discussions. Christina, are you there?
Yeah, she's there. She's there.
Yeah, Christina, please. Yeah. Please unmute yourself and
Yeah, I'm there. Sorry, I've been up and down. I've just been joining you guys on the road. Now I'm home, but it has been a very insightful discussion. Yeah, you guys have read too much. I've read more cases than some of us lawyers. Yeah, but it is quite important. As a practicing advocate, I can actually confirm to all of you that most of the cases that go to employment courts, they usually end up in favor of the employees. So as employers, we really have to be very keen to make sure that the procedures are there, to make sure that you just follow them to a T, because they're usually very particular. Did you give the notice? Did you give them a fair hearing? What is fair? All of those things that you guys have discussed. So yeah, it has been very insightful to me, and I'm looking forward to further discussions like this. Yeah, thank you.
That's very reassuring. Thank you so much, Christina, for joining us, and thank you for associating yourself with the profession. We are glad to have you, and we look forward to collaborations and strengthening these conversations as we endeavor to understand the labor laws, which are not very, very, very easy and interesting. I have seen one question which I would like to just highlight, as Richard and Hosea probably moderate the Q&A session. Someone was asking about the statutory deductions, including the new finance bill, and that's a whole topic altogether. KRA has been graciously facilitating those sessions, especially with I've seen them come to our place of work, but the emphasis really was the people who deal with the payroll and all, the director, and of course the people who deal with payroll. I personally do not deal with those. But what I would say is that as long as it is a statutory deduction, that we have no other choice but to oblige. We cannot run away from statutory. They are mandatory. It's mandatory that you enforce those deductions in your organizations. So over to you, Richard, to moderate the Q&A.
Mercy, thank you very much for that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful facilitation. The only thing I can tell you about performance management, you may have facts about performance management, but if your processes are wanting, you will lose. So which means you must have your processes very well done. Not only very well done, but the users must be aware of those processes. All right. Let us have questions. You can unmute yourself. Please don't go very much into saying comment because we don't have time. Just ask a question if you have. Okay. Anybody who has a question, burning question, let it be a question, not a comment.
I have a question to the council, kindly.
The council has left. We have a student of, a student, but I don't want to pinpoint her. Yeah, you know, Kara, I'm talking about you. I don't want to, because you came in late, so I might not want you to answer the questions. What is the question? Maybe we can be able to assist.
Yeah, in her comment, she said that most of the time when our cases go to the labor courts, they always intend to favor the employee. So if she could, or anyone could give us a heads up, what is this thing that seem to cut across every cases that employers bring that do not hold waters, that we always tend to lose the case?
Don't use the word every. Don't use every. Not you have to remove the word every. Ama namna gani Mercy? The word every.
Maybe, maybe for, yes.
Yeah?
Maybe for that question, I can step in and attempt to answer. It's because in most cases, it's about process. So in most cases, you find that the employer has processes and policies, but they themselves have not followed the process conclusively. Because during the court, you're asked, how do you measure performance management? And then the court can be able to pick inconsistencies in how you carry out your performance management, or any case that goes to the court. How long? Let me give you an example. Maybe when you are inviting someone for a disciplinary hearing, do you give them enough time to respond to the show cause? Do you give them enough time, enough notice to come for the disciplinary hearing? So you find that the notice was you called someone today, and tomorrow you expect them to be there. So such minor issues. And remember, maybe Mercy can correct me if I'm wrong, the court itself was established because to expedite cases of employees. So basically, as per the name, as whatever, the employees. It's like the small disputes courts, I'm sure, they are created to sort out these issues quicker. So basically, it was created for purposes of enabling the employee. So in that basis, it's up to the employer to prove the employee wrong, if I were to use that.
In addition to what Jose has said, courts are very suspicious of power. And an employee is a very powerful person. Yes, next question.
Just to add something, I want to also comment the colleagues that the process is the major challenge, that if not followed to the letter, it will lead to problems. Number two, law is made for the weak. The labor laws have been made for the weak, and the weak person here is the employee. We cannot compete the employee with the employer. The employer is a strong person, and the law has been made for the weak. Then number three, labor laws give a lot of responsibility to the employer. The employer has to take responsibility for everything done by the employee. It is the duty of the employer to ensure that employees understand everything that they are supposed to do in their workplace. And then lastly, all employees obtain their rights, or labor laws are founded within the Constitution in the Bill of Rights. So employee rights are a matter of law and are fundamental. So the employer has to ensure that all these things are adhered to. Otherwise, they will pay the employee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Christina, you dodged when you are to be put on the hot seat. The question was, you made a statement that in most instances, the courts, especially the employment courts, are not in all instances, but in most instances. Probably in 1 minute you can justify that. Why do we make those mistakes? Carol, you have something to say before Christina said something?
Yes, thank you. I know you mentioned me earlier on. I wanted to say that in spite of the fact that the law seems to, decided cases in court seem to favor employees, the law also provides safety guards for the employer. And what I saw, I know I was on judicial attachment in the Employment and Labor Relations Court, is that employers don't hold themselves to the law. So for instance, and employers in this case even include in the domestic arena, for instance, an employee works on holidays, an employee is not compensated for the extra hours as the law provides. So the employer leaves themselves open when the employee takes them to court. So it's important for human resource practitioners to continuously evaluate their guidelines, their processes, and continuously educate the employees and be in communication of expectations, because actually 90% of the cases that have been determined have been determined in favor of the employee because of gaps and gaffes that the employer has left. Yet the law also provides for protection for the employer.
Good. Christina, you can amplify for a minute what Carol has said, and also in relation to the question of most employers losing in court.
I have a request before Christina comes in, because she will now summarize. Can I add something small?
Okay, all right.
Thank you so much. I would like to contribute by saying, in most cases, in case of maybe, let's say,
Okay.
To provide, yes.
Is it George?
Yeah, George.
We lost you completely. We didn't get the gist of your.
Oh, thank you. Someone was calling and interrupted me. So I was saying, number one, the burden of proof lies squarely on the employer. That's the first thing to be noted. Number two, the court is much more concerned about the processes taken. And then number three, we have what is called clarity. And then number four, we have what is called communication. And finally, number five, we have what is called fairness. So court will consider all these things. Can the employer provide enough information? And that one calls for what we call documentation. Is the employer fair when administering the administrative action? That's what we call the fairness. Is there any proper communication?
Okay.
And again, yes, thank you so much on that.
Time is running. Time is running. We were supposed to finish at 7:30. We have gone to 7:53. Was something to add?
Richard, just please allow me, Richard.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. I just want to ask this question. Who is to blame in a case where it is the board of directors who has messed up the HR? Who takes the blame? Because they tend to push for their ways. Maybe that is why even the procedures are not being followed to the latter.
Mercy, Christina, Carol, who is to blame?
The company, and then they fire you.
But you warn them, you tell them this is the procedure.
All right, the question is enough. Because of time. Carol, say something in 30 seconds. Christina, then Mercy.
In this case, if you say board of directors, I expect you mean the board of directors whom the MD reports to. So the MD is the chief operating officer. So he sits between HR and the board. So unless you're talking about the executive committee, but I believe the MD is responsible for HR, who reports to him, and the MD reports to the board, and vice versa. So I would put the MD there.
All right. Thank you. Christina, are you there or you've gone? Christina?
Dropped.
She dropped. Mercy? Is it Josephine? Who is this? Josephine, yes. Oh, your hand has been up for a while. I don't want you to go home and say, this man, Richard. Josephine?
Thank you, Richard. You gave me an opportunity. I just forgot to turn it off. Thank you.
All right. Mercy?
Thank you. And thank you, George and Carol and Christina, for responding to most of the questions. Who is to blame? In most cases, we don't sue individuals. We say that we sue the organization, isn't it? So the employee or the petitioner in this regard will be suing the organization. So who is the face of the organization? It is the CEO, isn't it? And whether or not we will blame the HR, we will blame the supervisor or the manager. At the end of the day, the buck stops with the CEO. As to whether there is evidence on your side as the HR on what you did, that is now internal. You could be the next person on the line of being fired, because if the company then is able to demonstrate that there was negligence on your part, then guess who will be being terminated? It could be you. So it is important that when it comes to issues on people management, then as HRs, we are at the forefront of ensuring that our organizations do the right thing. And where you're required to advise, and you advise, and your advice is not being heeded, to put it in writing. Make sure that whatever you advise or whatever it is that you're saying, you put it in writing, whether it is in form of minutes or email or a memo or a communication, to show that you're covering yourself and that is your position. And then should things go south, then at least somebody will absolve your blame. The other questions have been answered. The other questions that are coming up is on whether we are going to be having more of these sessions. The answer is a big yes. So watch out for more schedules on these kind of conversations to hone our skills. And to those who have given us positive review and comments, we highly appreciate. Thank you, everybody, and thank you so much for your time. Richard, back to you to close for us.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want your certificates, you see this particular moment was free, but if you want a certificate to remember this particular session, we will require you to have 200 bob. You can either contact Hosea or me, then you can get your certificate on this particular moment that we have had. And ladies and gentlemen, we have gone way past where we were supposed to go, and I know this topic is very juicy. Mercy, thank you very much for agreeing to share your immense and impressive knowledge. Mpigie makofi ya virtual makofi. Please appreciate Mercy. Mpigie makofi in the next 20 seconds. Makofi ya nyayo ile ya kufunga na kufungua. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Then let us appreciate Christina, who was here, who has left, but still we can appreciate her because she was here to see if you people are making ignorant points that are not aligned with the law. So let us appreciate Christina. You can send our appreciation to Christina Mercy, all right? Then we can appreciate Hosea, who is the technical person who makes sure that the slides are looking beautiful. He's the tech person, HR, but tech person. Pigie makofi. Thank you very much. Carol, thank you very much for stepping in. Your legal mind has been appreciated. Pigie makofi pia. And lastly, but not the least, they are jipigie makofi wewe mwenyewe. Learn to appreciate yourself. Learn to appreciate yourself. Mercy, you are not appreciating yourself. You are
I
not-
am with so many.
All right, very good. Thank you for being here. From your moderator, Richard J. Magoma, I wish you a very, very pleasant evening. Good night, and be watching in these streets that we might decide even to have a whole day seminar about employment. Kama namna gani, Mercy, a whole day. Tuende maybe ni Eka, tuende maybe somewhere.
Absolutely.
We sit
Absolutely.
and look at these case laws, we look at, and then we totally stop making mistakes that can be stopped. God bless
Richard,
everyone.
contacts.
Yes. Good night.
Contacts, please.
Contacts, I'll give you mine so that I can, in case you have a question, then I can spread it to relevant people. Or
And the
stakeholders.
certificate also.
0710,
For the
you have my
certificate.
phone. Certificate
Yes.
0710.
Put it on the chat.
Oh, chat. Hosea, wewe ndio mtu wa tech. Wewe you are tech savvy. Hebu weka-
Okay, let's take time. We can take time to fill the form, and then we'll be able to reach out. Even the presentations, you'll get them on your email.
Okay.
All
right. Okay.
Just leave your details on the
Okay.
Okay, thank
form.
you.
Okay. Na umekuwa Kiswahili changu ni kibofu. Umekuwa mtu moderator Josephine. Umekuwa Josephine, umekuwa moderator. Sasa next time wewe ndio utakaa kwa hii kiti.
Thank
Ndio-
you, Richard. Thank you.
Waambie watu maneno. Thank you, very good night. We have to appreciate George. Thank you for your energy. I don't know if you have left. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Richard.
Good night.
Good job. Thank you, Hosea. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening. See you soon.